and good evening. Happy Memorial Day. And I just want to take a second before we get started to just have a moment to honor all those who have given their lives in service, in war, throughout the ages, not just the ones that you and I might remember, but, you know, war's kind of been a staple since the beginning of humankind. And so many people have lost their lives so that we might be right here, right now, where we are. And we're grateful. So thank you. We've got a great show tonight. My guest is Robert Mack. He's a positivity expert. And that's where we're going to start tonight. He's an author. He's got his own TV show, La La Land. And, you know, he's highly recommended by Oprah. And he's focused on joy and seeing the positive sides of things. So welcome, Robert.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so, you know, I can't wait to find out more about you and how you got onto this tack. Because, you know, I think if you ask any person on the street what they really want, they're going to say, oh, I want money, or I want love, or I want a great career and all that. But, you know, I think underneath, in my opinion, underneath all of that, people just want to be happy, right?
I couldn't agree with you more about that. It's interesting because I think everything that we want to achieve, accomplish, or acquire, we only want because we think we'll feel better for having it, right? So happiness for me is the entire end and aim and the entire point and purpose of human existence and life. So I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. So how did you get on this this quest to help people become more positive and make a choice to joy?
I took the long, scenic path. I took the unhappy path. I grew up, and I was really lucky and blessed and fortunate. I had a beautiful, loving family, and I did well academically and athletically. But I feel like I was unhappy ever since I was alive, almost. I know that's not true, but that was what it felt like. And so that unhappiness just grew over the years, and I hated myself. And even though I didn't have a whole lot of good reasons to be unhappy, meaning my life was pretty good on the outside, I felt horrible for it, and I felt unhappy for it on the inside. And so as that depression grew, and eventually I began to experience some suicidal ideation, and then I became convinced that I wanted to commit suicide. I wanted to kill myself. And at the time I had, you know, a beautiful girlfriend. I worked a fantastic job, and I was healthy, but I was experiencing what I later discovered was existential angst. Existential angst is kind of like, you know, confusion and frustration and depression with respect to what our existence means and what it's for. And so at some point in time, I did some research. I decided that I was going to slit my wrist. And I remember going into the kitchen and grabbed the kitchen knife, and I dug it into my wrist. And this strangest thing happened because, you know, at the time I was really wanting not to live anymore, and I was trying to see how painful it was going to be. And in that moment, as I began to really get clear about committing suicide, I experienced this inexplicable peace that I had never experienced before. And so in the moment, at that time, I decided, I could put off the suicide thing for at least an hour, you know, and the hour bled into sort of a day. The day bled into several weeks. And all the while, I was doing some research of my own on what other smarter people had said and discovered about happiness. And in that time, I discovered that a lot of people were feeling just like me. They were lonely. Maybe they were feeling deeply dysphoric, if not depressed. And, you know, ever since 1950, we've been experiencing 10 times the depression, the stress, the anxiety, and you know, despite life having gotten so much better since then.
Yeah, you know, and I think that, and a lot of people I think this. I didn't originate this thought, but it comes when we're looking outside ourselves for fulfillment. The great job, the great girlfriend, all the things you listed are not that inner joy.
Beautifully said. So beautifully said. Yeah, it's looking for happiness in all the wrong places, right? Mm-hmm. We do the same thing with love, and we do the same thing with true abundance. And over time, I came to that recognition that it was all within me, particularly the happiness. And sometimes, we all have experiences maybe with pleasure or bliss or a moment where we feel at peace, but we tend to project those experiences, those feelings onto people or circumstances or conditions outside of ourselves. And of course, that's really the error in our ways. And so over time, as I began just diving more deeply inside, I found how true that was. That it wasn't just a spiritual platitude that happiness comes from the inside, that happiness is an inside job, but it's actually the truth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it took me 71 years to really figure that out, well, that's not true. Probably 69 years, because I think for the last 2 years I've really been sort of living that. But it took me a long time, and you think you took the circuitous route. Whew.
Yeah. So you must have started 50 years before you were born then.
You're right.
Being 21 and all.
Yeah, I try to tell people, I had my kids when I was 11, and y'all read about me in the National Enquirer. That's why they're 46 and 48.
Amazing, by the way. Really amazing.
Oh, Lord have mercy. But, it really, it is a choice, isn't it?
It is a choice, and it does require some practice, if I to put it bluntly. In the beginning, I was quite sure that the problem was me, and that I needed to dive deeper into myself to find the happiness. But I think in the beginning, it was such hard work, and it felt really impossible. I was trying to think better, more positive thoughts. I was trying to look at things in a more positive, better feeling way, and it just struggled, and it felt like I was just, trying to push this big boulder up the hill only for it to roll back down over top of me again and again. But as I continued drowning myself in really inspiring books and teachers and videos and audio tapes, this was back in the day, I suddenly discovered that I was making progress, but I wasn't quite aware of it. And actually the day that I committed to not focusing on the progress, but just focusing on doing my best to enjoy the moment, and to do that over and over again, I just kept experiencing these deeper and deeper revelations about happiness and about peace and about love. And each revelation, each insight made my experience that much more effortless, that much more automatic, and that much more enjoyable.
So it sounds like you made the shift from doing to being.
Boom, you just nailed it. Oh, I love it. That was the big shift. You're right. That was the really sort of monumental sort of shift in my life, most transformative shift, was when I realized that you can't think yourself to happiness, the true, abiding, unconditional, unfettered, limitless happiness that you and I speak of. You can't think your way there. You start there with the thoughts. But ultimately, at the end of the day, happiness isn't something that's even within you. It's something that is you. And you discover that when you stop thinking so much.
Right, yeah. And it's easy to say that or to read it, but it ends up, I think, becoming like a platitude. And people have to get to that space for themselves. It's not something that you or I don't think can show somebody how to do it. Because, again, that's doing.
You nailed it.
I think that probably what happened to you in that moment when you decided to put the knife down, and you said you felt that peace, was that you stepped away from the doing action into a being place.
Yes, I stepped away from both the doing, and I would consider thinking to be a doing, right? So I stepped away from the doing, including the thinking, and for a moment I just was truly present, and I was rooted in and centered in and planted in my true nature, right? Which we're always planted in, which we're always centered in, but we often overlook our true nature, which is happiness, when we start thinking and when we start doing. And because we overlook happiness, we begin searching for it in the world. But the second we stop the search in the world, we no longer overlook the happiness, and we can simply be happy, simply be happiness. And so what you said is just everything. It's quite funny, actually, and I suppose that's why you see all the laughing Buddhas and whatnot, because, when you discover that everything you've been looking for, like happiness and peace and love, is something that you can experience more easily, effortlessly, effectively, efficiently, efficaciously, when you stop trying so hard. It's kind of wild,
Yeah, I just finished reading a book called Rise, Sister, Rise, by Rebecca Campbell. And one of the things that she says in there, one of her chapter titles is "Call Off the Search Party." I was in here all along.
Oh, I love that. That's just what a gorgeous way of describing it. It's true. Yeah. And it's also true what you said earlier that, experience is the only explanation, and we like to think we can convince through our words, but we're much better at just living, sort of being that living, shining example of calling off the search and of being presence, that peaceful, loving, happy presence as consistently as possible and doing it just for the joy of it. And then often other people say, oh, wow, that's so interesting that you're this shining light, and that's a better teacher than any words could possibly do.
For sure. Somebody sent me a YouTube, I think a couple of days ago, because I think fairly recently I have finally figured out one of the things that's caused me struggle over the years is that I'm an Aspie. I'm pretty high up on the Asperger's scale, and I thought I was just weird. But the video was a professor who was like the preeminent expert on Asperger's syndrome, and he's like helped millions of people all over the world, and people go to him about Asperger's, and he had a son who was Asperger's, and he didn't diagnose his own son because he was, too close. The son suffered from this existential depression because he couldn't figure out how to relate to the outer world. And, I think that sometimes there is some sort of situation or even, an illness. Or in this case, I don't think Asperger's is an illness. It's just maybe we're the new humans. I don't know.
Absolutely agree. Yes, absolutely love that. I agree with that because I've worked with folks on the spectrum, on the spectrum, and Asperger's being one of those diagnoses. And it's interesting because, and I've got lots of friends too that are challenged with it, and also they're blessed with it because the ways in which they see things and experience things and can express things and communicate things are just so deeply inspiring and so brilliant and so refreshingly different.
Outside the box and no filters.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I just love it. And I also understand the challenge of it. But I really appreciate you sharing that because I know it's had to have been sort of a mixed experience for you, both the challenge on one hand and on the other. So interesting and new and fresh in the perspective you offer.
Yeah, and so I just want to put that out to people. If you want to get that link, if you'll just email me, Jean at jeanadrienne.com. If you think this might be of help to you, I will send you the link. I don't have it, right on the tip of my fingers or the tip of my tongue right now. I can't even remember the professor's name, but I'm happy to get that material to you if you think it might support you in some way. So you've got a master's degree in
applied positive
right?
psychology. Yes. So there's a program at University of Pennsylvania that focuses on the science of what makes life worth living, right? So it's this. They've done tens of thousands of studies, and they've basically discovered the secrets to happiness and the secrets to success, and the ways in which happiness influences success, and the ways in which success doesn't actually lead to happiness, which we're not surprised about at all. But they have shared some really dramatic findings around just that, what makes for a flourishing and a thriving life.
Yeah, and I don't really think that we can be successful until we can master being happy.
You just nailed it. I love what Tony Robbins said. He says, success without fulfillment is failure. And I agree with that. And I've also discovered, both in my own life, but also through the science, that, success doesn't lead to happiness. We're clear about that. That's why we have so many celebrities and folks that are really well off, but they're suicidal or they're depressed or they're experiencing some kind of really traumatic, addiction maybe. In addition to success not leading to happiness, happiness does lead to success, right? So happiness in my book is not just the greatest success because it's the point and purpose of it all, but it also leads to success. So we know that happy people, they live 6 to 7 years longer. They make $600,000 to $700,000 more on average over the course of their entire lifetime. They get married earlier, stay married longer, are happier in their relationships, whether they're married or not. They experience less job burnout. They're more efficient, effective, productive, creative. And in all ways, happiness enhances and improves your experience of life. And so it's just really beautiful to me to just hear that sort of validated by the scientific community. It's something that philosophers and poets and mystics and spiritual teachers have been talking about since the beginning of time. But it's nice when science catches up.
Exactly. And so you're going to be one of the speakers at the Reignite Your Light Summit, which is coming up in less than a month now. I'm so excited about this. And I'm sure that you're going to be talking about this, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I always joke and I say I only really have one thing that I'm truly deeply passionate about, and it's happiness. I love people being happy because it makes me happy, and the happier people are, the happier world we live in. So yeah, I'll be talking about, I'll start with the science of happiness, but we're going to dive deep into this sort of spirituality of happiness.
Perfect. So if you're joining us today and you haven't caught some of the other speakers that I've interviewed over the last couple of weeks, this summit is the 22nd and 23rd of June. It's going to be at the Westin on the Beach in Fort Lauderdale. And the website that you can find out more about this is Reignite Your Light Summit, reigniteyourlightevents.com. And all the speakers are listed there. The schedule of the event is there, and it's very, very reasonably priced. And the creator of this, Robin Rose, has done an amazing job to get hotel rooms at that Westin for $149 a night. I mean, that's just unbelievable.
It is. It's a gorgeous hotel. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm going to be there. Robert's going to be there. All the other people that you've seen on my show are going to be there, plus hundreds of others. And the event will be amazing. But, Robert, can you give the viewers tonight maybe just one tip that they could take away from this about how to be happy?
Oh, absolutely. So I call them micro meditations, but the idea is that we often try too hard and too long to be happy. And it's easier, I think, than we make it out to be. And so instead of spending hours and hours meditating, one of the greatest things you can do is just simply take one breath, let all your thoughts go, and take that breath with one goal. And that goal is simply to enjoy that breath as deeply and fully as possible with nothing else in your mind. So your only goal is joy. And you want to take that breath like it's the last breath you'll ever take on earth. You don't know, 5 seconds from now, 5 minutes from now, 5 years from now, you might not be in this physical body anymore. And so the idea is to practice that micro meditation as frequently as humanly possible, no matter what else you're doing. So when you're in conversation, when you're in the shower, when you're driving, whatever you're doing, you'll find that that one little tip and trick will be more transformative for you than if you were to meditate for hours a day, because most, even expert meditators, have a real challenge and difficulty integrating that meditative approach into the daily activities of their lives.
Right.
So sometimes I call it practicing the presence of God too, because mostly what I do is I try to not focus on the breath so much. I just focus on the feeling or experience of peaceful aliveness inside my own heart or my own soul. And the same idea, but I just try to take that with me everywhere. So that's been probably one of the greatest tools for me.
That's perfect. That is, I love that. I live that. So I agree with you. And I think it's wonderful. And I can't wait to meet you in person in June. This is just going to be so much fun and so enlightening, enlivening, and joy-filled, because I just know it is. So thank you very much, Robert. And next week, my guest is going to be Les Jensen. He's been on my show several times. He is the creator of New Human Living, and we're going to talk about what it means to be a human in these days and times, and how time actually is making all things new. Being is making all things new. And so that should be a great show as well. So I look forward to seeing you all next week as well. And until then, remember, people who take responsibility for their lives create the reality they desire. I love you all. Can't wait to see you in